Welcome, everyone. My name is Maya Schoenbach, and I am a clinical psychologist and the clinical program director here at TrickStop. And today we are going to be talking about triggers and hair pulling. So, the moments where kind of an urge seems to come really out of nowhere. And today we're going to try and slow down and explore what actually really sets those moments off. So we'll look together at the different kinds of things that trigger hair pulling and then try to be really show compassion towards them. And I really suggest that you guys stick around until the end because first of all, I'll show a discount code for subscribing to our program. And also we'll do a Q&A all together at the end of the program. So it's a great chance to ask any questions that you have. And so I really hope that ask any questions that you have or any comments or feedback, anything throughout the webinar today. Just write them into the chat and then we'll go through them all together at the end. So let's get started. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. So we'll cover what is a trigger to get a good definition. We'll look at different types of triggers and what the research shows about the most common ones. Then we're going to look at different styles of pulling, so focused versus automatic. And then we're going to look at some more practical ways of understanding and kind of finding the your own personal triggers. So starting with awareness and then kind of some practical steps of mapping your own triggers. And then we'll go through a case example of this all together and then go over the key takeaways and do the Q&A, like I said. So important for me to say is that we have together probably will be about 45 minutes. But yes, definitely write in your questions throughout. And about the recording, there is a recording, like I said, and it'll be sent by mail to people that signed up, and you can always find our recordings on our YouTube channel also. Okay, so let's start off with what really is a trigger. So when we talk about triggers, we talk about internal or external events that really spark the urge to pull. So it's important to say that these are things that can show up anywhere at any time. And really, one of the most challenging parts is that they're often hard to notice in the moment while they're happening. So, common examples that people have reported include noticing maybe an imperfection, maybe feeling a hair that's kind of out of out of line with the others, feeling bored, and then picking when you're absent-minded, having a distressing thought and that leading to it. Um, it could be as simple as really just having your hand near your face, near your head, near your scalp, near your face, eyebrows, eyelashes, near a certain part of the body. So all of these cues seem really small in their own, but they're often enough to activate the urge and then push you kind of over the edge into actually performing the behavior of pulling. So this is important to say that triggers are rarely just about one single cause, one thing. Instead, they're usually the result of what we say a layered combination of factors. So for example, someone might be feeling bored and then all of a sudden catch sight of themselves in the mirror and then also have an anxious thought, could be maybe I'm need to lose weight. And then all of those things come together to spark the urge to pull. And research really supports this complexity. So, in a study on trichotillomania specifically, that we're going to talk about shortly, most people reported 2 or 3 triggers before a pulling episode. And that really also helps explain why triggers can really feel confusing or unpredictable because it's not usually just one cause. It's again the mixture of this internal and external elements that together create the strongest pull towards pulling. Um, and another really important thing to remember is really that anything can be a trigger. So triggers are extremely individual. So what might spark the urge for one person, may not affect another person at all. And then, even for the same person, a trigger might show up differently depending on the situation. So, for example, a mirror in the bathroom might be triggering, but a mirror in the bedroom might not be triggering at all. Or being alone versus with other people. Um, or having an internal state like being bored, or feeling stressed, or things, the way that perfectionism shows up. And those all can interact with the idea with other things of maybe being alone versus with other people. So, for example, maybe if you're bored and you're sitting at home, maybe you're reading a book, you're watching TV, and all of a sudden you feel bored, and all of a sudden you're absent-mindedly um, pulling your hair. Versus if you're bored, if you're zoning out in a meeting at work, maybe you're less likely to do that. So really, that's why there's no kind of one size fits all list of triggers. Every person's triggers are unique, and really the a huge part of the work in treating trichotillomania is learning to identify really the patterns that are unique and specific to you, and then after that tailoring the treatment to those specific triggers and patterns of triggers. Okay, so now that I said that they're all unique with a big asterisk here, let's go over the categories kind of different common types of triggers. And these are the categories, like I said, that were found to be most common in a study of trichotillomania. And I really want to urge you guys all, once we go through them, feel free really to share if there's any additional ones that you guys experience. Always, it really is helpful to other people to feel like they're not alone with their experience. And this is also what's so nice about this research. So, like I said, it's by Wetternick and colleagues, and this was a study conducted in 2020. And so, the most commonly reported trigger that they found, with about 83% of participants in the study saying that they experienced it, was of general uncomfortableness. So, this can really take on a lot of different forms. So, they described it as a vague unease or tension without really a clear source. Um, so it could be a strong um, feeling of pressure or not just right feeling that leads to that doesn't feel okay until you pull, or you need to pull in order to kind of correct the feeling. Some people described as a buildup of mental energy, again, mentally, that needs to be kind of discharged. Um, and this is something that's way more kind of less specific than other triggers. But like I said, it's the most common and it's really powerful. And here, pulling kind of fills a gap of maybe not just right feeling or feeling uncomfortable, and then eases that discomfort of that feeling. And then the next common one is bodily sensation. So these are those physical symptoms that show up before the pulling. And so in the study, about 3 out of 4 participants reported bodily sensations as a major trigger. And so these are, again, a kind of general feeling of inner tension or pressure. In this case, it's a buildup of physical energy that kind of needs to be released or discharged. It could be a sensation in a specific area of the body. And then again, maybe another not just right feeling in a specific body part, or tingling or burning around maybe around the hair or in a specific body part again. Um, so there's a bodily sensations, and then another category that seems similar, but these are more I like to say of the biological symptoms. Um, Also focus more in the body. And here, over half, so 54% of participants reported physical symptoms as the triggers, and they described these as changes in heart rate, so feeling your heart racing typically, changes in breathing, so heavier breathing, sweating, um, sensations like tingling, trembling, dizziness, maybe digestive issues, or having discomfort in your throat, like not feeling nauseous, maybe feeling a lump in your throat or dry mouth. And these are all physical symptoms that we know are also connected to the emotion of anxiety, the emotion of fear that we'll talk about shortly. And these are kind of the physical shifts that really can bring a strong internal signal that often pulling ends up relieving um, that kind of discomfort. So another major category of triggers is mental anxiety. So in that's emotional or cognitive stress that can trigger the episodes. And so in the study, about 41% of participants reported that these types of triggers played a strong role. And actually, the most common example here, this was interesting, was a fear of uh, being out of control or fear of losing control. And that was reported by 60% of the participants. And then others described self-critical worries, maybe fearing how they looked, or feared being judged or criticized by others. Others also talked about an intense feeling of dread or fear or worry, like I just talked about, that's connected really to those physical symptoms. And then these kinds of really anxious thoughts can create a really powerful internal pressure that then drives the urge to pull. And then the final category of triggers that they talked about in the study comes from thoughts, ideas, or images. So in the study, about just over a third of participants reported this type of trigger. And so for some, it starts with a negative emotion that fuels the urge. Others describe thoughts or images uh, of a certain specific area of the body, or again, needing to the thought of that I need to achieve a certain feeling, or to relieve something, to feeling of relief, or to achieve a certain feeling of satisfaction. And then some, it's about the beliefs about whether pulling is acceptable, and then that could make the behavior feel kind of easier to justify in the actual moment. And these kind of thought-based triggers, they might feel or seem less obvious than kind of physical sensations or this anxiety. They really can be just as powerful. Um, and then again, so if you guys can think of any more broad categories of triggers or even specific triggers, definitely feel free to share them in the chat and we can go over them together at the end of the webinar. Okay. So far we've talked about um, different categories of triggers. Um, but now I want to focus on focus versus automatic pulling. That really research shows that episodes tend to fall into two main styles of focus versus automatic pulling. And then it's important to understand the difference between these two styles because each episode is driven by different types of triggers, and then you might need different strategies to manage different types of triggers in different styles. So what are these two styles? So focus pulling, it's more deliberate. So people are typically aware of the urge and then pull intentionally in response to the urges or the thoughts or the emotions. Like I said, it can sometimes feel like a way of releasing tension or reaching a particular goal, maybe achieving satisfaction or kind of getting a certain hair out or kind of smoothing maybe the hair. Um, so that's the focus pulling. And then on the other hand, there's automatic pulling, and that typically happens outside of awareness. And many people really describe it as happening when they're distracted, when they're bored, when they're zoned out. Like I said, maybe when you're watching TV, when you're reading, or when you're driving, that's another one. And it's important to say that many people experience both styles of pulling, and it can even happen in the exact same day. And like I said, it's important to recognize kind of which style or which mode you're in because it helps you better understand your behavior and then ideally better tailor the strategies for each situation, and then to ultimately create change overall. So, like I said, not only does focused and automatic pulling not only do these types look different, but also the triggers behind them also tend to differ. So, with focus pulling, the trigger could be something typically that you maybe notice or you feel. It could be a rough spot in the hair, or maybe an emotional state like stress or frustration, and you're aware of this. And then you pull in order to achieve a release or a sense of satisfaction. Um, and then with automatic pulling, like I said, it's outside of your awareness. So the trigger is often the situation that you're in. So maybe feeling bored, going through a daily routine, zoning out when you're distracted. And here, you might not even realize that the pulling is happening until after the fact. Um, and so again, this really matters to understand the different styles because the different each style of trigger might require different strategies. And so what works maybe in a focus moment might not work in an automatic one. Okay. So let's shift from really the body and the nervous system and the emotions to no, not the emotions, to the emotional world and to some practical steps on how to identify triggers. So awareness, it's really the foundation of creating change here. So if we can notice the moment before pulling, this helps us create space for choice. So without awareness, our behaviors typically run on autopilot. We're doing things habitually, we're doing things automatically. And so, really learning to tune into those early signs, that's really the first step towards developing coping strategies that can work. Um, and so, it's something that's designed to help you notice the moments before. So, there's a few practical ways that you can do that you could do to build awareness. So one is mindfulness. So that includes techniques like grounding, and we'll actually practice a short technique together now. And also it could be as simple as just pausing in the moment and trying to check in with yourself, saying, what are the body sensations that I feel, or before having the urge to pull. You could say to yourself, as it's happening, I'm noticing my hand near my face, near maybe my eyelashes as you're about to pull. Um, Another thing is self-monitoring. So you can, or journaling. It's really important. We'll talk about this in a little bit about writing down what's happening, what you're thinking, what you're feeling. That really helps kind of make the invisible patterns visible. And speaking about patterns is really pattern spotting. So over time, you can look back and see repeating combinations of triggers, and that really helps you predict and hopefully prepare for specifically high risk moments. All right, so let's take a really short pause together and practice a grounding exercise all together. So this is something, first of all, that you can do all by yourself anytime that you feel the urge coming on. I wrote it down here, but in short, it's just to notice 5 things that you see, 4 things that you feel, 3 that you hear, 2 that you smell, 1 that you taste. But I'll lead us through kind of a practice together. Okay, so if you're feeling comfortable, maybe gently place your feet on the floor. Take a slow breath in and out. Now, look around the space that you're in and notice 5 things that you can see. They might be objects, could be shapes, colors. Just name them quietly in your mind. Now, bring your attention to your touch. Notice four things that you can feel. It could be your feet against the floor, maybe the chair beneath you, maybe the fabric of your clothes, maybe your hands resting in your lap. Now tune into your hearing. What are three sounds that you can notice right now? It could be close by or far away. Could be just my voice simply. Could be background noise that you hear. Now shift to your sense of smell. What are two things that you can smell? Nothing stands out. Just notice the neutral sense of the space you're in. Now, finally, your sense of taste. Notice one thing that you can taste. Could be maybe lingering from a meal, maybe the natural taste in your mouth only. Now take one more slow breath in and out. And when you're ready, bring your attention back to the webinar. And so this is an exercise that you can do, like I said, by yourself. And it really helps you reconnect with your body and with your surroundings also. So it's also something designed to build awareness and really, like I said, give you enough space between the urge and the emotion and the trigger and the actual behavior and action of pulling, and hopefully make a choice and ideally choose a different action other than pulling, or pulling if that's what you decide, but then just to have that sense of agency and that choice. Okay, so as we've seen, triggers are really unique for every person. And the best way to understand your own patterns is to map them out. So by really noticing when urges happen and writing them down and looking for patterns, then you'll start to see the specific combinations that lead up to your own pulling. So now we're going to walk through, like I said, like a simple 4-step process that'll really help you start mapping your triggers so you can really move from maybe feeling confused by what your triggers are to then hopefully recognizing the kind of signals that come before you pull. Okay, so we've talked about awareness already, but really the first step in mapping your triggers is simply to notice the moment when an urge comes up. So to ask yourself, what was I doing? Where was I? What was I feeling? What was I sensing in my body? So these are all details that are really important that help you capture the moment just before the behavior starts. And then importantly to say is at this stage, we're just noticing. The goal isn't to change anything. It's just to notice here. So step one, just to notice. Okay, and then once you notice a trigger, the next step is to record it. So this doesn't have to be complicated. We really just want you to jot down a few words. Could be in your phone. It could be in a notebook. You could use an app if you want to. I really recommend just using the notes on your phone. If you have your phone with you often, just writing that down. So really important to write down the situation, your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations, any triggers that you've noticed. But really, again, key here, keep it short and simple. Don't want to overthink it. Very short notes. And recording helps bring what's usually automatic into your awareness. So just the act itself of writing it down is very helpful. But we'll talk about how now looking for patterns is important. And in terms of recording, sorry. In terms of recording, I typically suggest recording for at least a week in order to actually get a good enough amount of material in order to start recognizing your patterns. So, like I've talked about many times, that over time you'll start to see patterns, and that's really step three is to look for them. So maybe certain times of day stands out. Maybe certain places stand out. Maybe like your bathroom or your desk. Um, Maybe you have particular emotions or sensations that keep showing up. Maybe it's when you're stressed. Maybe it's when you're bored. Um, and so it's really important to look for these kind of repeating elements to help you understand when you're most vulnerable to pulling. And then step four is to remember that it's rarely one thing. So most people, like we saw in the study, is that most people report two or even three triggers leading up to a pulling episode. So again, with that example, if you might feel bored, you might also see yourself in a mirror and have an anxious thought, and all together, that combination might spark the urge to pull. Um, and so really mapping out, doing all of these steps to map out your triggers really kind of helps you untangle all of these different layers. And then so you can see how these different pieces come together and then maybe prepare for each of them individually. And I'm just saying we're not going into the strategies to prepare for these different situations. We actually have whole webinars dedicated to that. So if you look that up on our website or on our YouTube channel, if you look up HRT, those are really the main gold standards of strategies, CBT therapy that really helps target those the different triggers in different ways. Okay, but now let's go through a case example to really understand and bring to life this whole idea of mapping out your triggers. Okay, so here, this is Michaela. She is a 32-year-old young professional who struggles with hair pulling. So at first, like maybe many of you, she couldn't see a pattern in her triggers. She didn't know when her pulling episodes would happen. They felt like they were coming out of nowhere. But once she started mapping her triggers step by step using the four steps, she actually saw that most of her pulling episodes were happening at work. So let's go through together the four steps and see what she did. So step one, first step, simply to notice the moment when an urge comes up, not to do anything yet, just to notice. So for Michaela, like I said, it was hard at first because she felt like everything was coming out of nowhere. All the pulling was happening randomly. So instead of trying to stop the behavior, like I said, you don't do anything. She practiced paying attention. So she, first of all, also practiced a daily mindfulness to build awareness. So, like, it could be something like taking 2 minutes to do a grounding exercise every morning. It could be listening to a 5 or 10 minute mindfulness recording off of YouTube or off of Spotify. Um, and she started simply asking herself uh, different questions to help grow her awareness. So she was asking herself, what was I doing just before this urge? Where was I? Who was I with? What was I feeling? What was happening in my body? And so really at the beginning, her answers were kind of vague. She wasn't used to it. But then slowly she started noticing more details, spotting the small details just before she was pulling. So she kind of was able to notice that her hands would start to drift toward her hair when she was sitting still, or that she felt kind of a subtle a tension in her body right before an episode started. And like I said, at this stage, the goal isn't to change anything. It's just to notice. And really also, this is something very important, is that shift as treating an urge as something that you're trying to observe rather than fight it. That really became kind of the foundation and very helpful in her to start discovering her personal trigger patterns. Okay, so step two is to record it. So this is what Michaela's log looked like just after a few days. So I want you guys, before you go through this, just to notice the notes are really short. So really just a few words about the time, place, what she was feeling or sensing. And you can even, I just showed 3 days here, but you can even within these 3 days start to see a pattern. So, day one, she wrote afternoon at her desk. She felt restless, her shoulders were tight, and she pulled at her scalp. And then in the evening, she was watching TV, she was bored. She had noticed her hand was near her face, and she pulled at her eyelashes. Then day two, it was the morning before a meeting. She felt really nervous, and she felt tension in her jaw, and then she pulled at her eyebrows. And then in the afternoon, she had a long email session. She was feeling frustrated, and she noticed her hand on her cheek, and going up, and then she pulled at her scalp. Day three, midday after a team meeting, she was worried about her impression, about how she came across. She felt her heart racing, and she again pulled out her scalp. And then in the evening, she was lying in bed. She was tired. She was zoning out, and she noticed that she was pulling, or pulled out her eyebrows. And so, here, like I said, if things are already, maybe you can start to see a pattern, really where things initially feel random, you can start to see a little bit of structure. So step three is to look for a pattern. So once you had I like to say at least a week of notes, she began to look for patterns. So again, okay, so this is actually from a word map, and you can create these online literally for free. Just copy paste if you write your notes on your phone, you can email them, or you can copy paste them, or on your computer, you can copy paste them into a website and really get a free word map. And it's a really helpful way to visualize things to look for patterns. So for her, the same words really were appearing again and again. So you see stress, hair, desk, work, boss. Um, so most of her pulling episodes weren't random at all. They were happening during or after work, and especially around on stressful meetings. And so really by looking at your notes visually, it really helps to see the bigger picture. And then the final step is recognizing really that urges don't come from one trigger. They come from several triggers that are layered together. So Michaela noticed that when she was stressed about a meeting and she felt some tension in her body and she was in a work setting, maybe like sitting at her desk, those three elements combined all together almost always led her to hair pulling. And so this layering is really what makes urges feel so powerful. And like I said, again, I just want to drive this home that research really shows that most people report at least 2 or 3 triggers before an episode. And so by mapping out these different layers, then it's really Michaela, but like you also can see why urges feel so overwhelming, and then start to plan strategies to target each layer. Okay, so now let's summarize what we've learned together. So when we talk about triggers, we mean internal or external events that spark the urge. So it's important to remember that almost anything can be a trigger, and that triggers are unique to every individual. So we categorized them together and talked about things ranging from a general sense of uncomfortableness or discomfort. Um, we talked about bodily sensations, things like tension or tingling or not just right feeling. We talked about physical symptoms, more of the biological things like heart racing, sweating, heavy breathing. We talked about mental anxiety, things like worry, fear of judgment, pressure. And then we've talked about thoughts, ideas, or images that pop into your mind that lead to a pulling episode. Then we talked about how different styles of pulling differ between focus versus automatic episodes. Focus ones are intentional. They're driven by things like emotions or visual or tactile cues. And then other styles are automatic episodes. And those typically happen outside of your awareness, maybe during a routine or when you're feeling bored. And then understanding that awareness really is the first step. So noticing your urges, um, really helps you create just a little bit of space between the urge and your behavior. And that's when we did the grounding exercise together. And then from there, mapping your triggers using the 4 steps that we went through really helps reveal kind of the patterns that are unique to you. And then finally, I really want to say that compassion is essential. So change doesn't come from judgment or self-criticism. It comes from being curious. It comes from being patient, and really being understanding to yourself as you're practicing new skills. These are all new things, and it's a lot of information also. So to be very patient with yourself and self-compassionate. So I want to just quickly talk about the free resources that we offer, and they're for subscribers and for non-subscribers to TrickStop. We really encourage everyone to use them. So, like we have monthly free webinars, and recordings of our past webinars, like I said, are available on our website and on our YouTube channel. We also have online forums that you can really access a lot of information about hair pulling. So look at trickstop.com. And then finally, I really, really recommend that you join or follow our social media accounts. They're just a really good opportunity for community. They're a comprehensive center for information and for treatment options. So definitely look us up on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or Twitter even. And like I said at the beginning, here is a $100 discount for the first month of signing up. You can use the promo code PROWEB100, and that'll give you a discount for subscribing to our program. And if you have any questions about the program, definitely email our customer support@trickstop.com. Or if you have any more questions, if you think about anything after the webinar, don't hesitate to email me, maya@helpinglines.com. And now I want to open it up for questions, and we'll go through the questions together in the chat. So somebody wrote that I'm watching as a parent of a lash puller. So I want to say that we actually have a parent program for TrickStop. So if you have any questions about that, you can definitely first of all look it up on the website, our website, trickstop.com, or send an email, because we have a program specifically for parents of children who struggle with hair pulling. So somebody wrote, it never occurred to me that my trick could be part of a very low level of bipolar I've been diagnosed with. So yeah, so maybe, are you saying maybe in terms of the fact that maybe with a high, like an element of mania or a low depression, maybe those emotions could be triggers for pulling episodes? Definitely could be linked. There's definitely a strong emotional component to urges of pulling. Another question is, what if you always think that nothing will help and so you continue to pull? Um, Nothing will help the pulling. Is that what you mean? Um, I mean, I kind of see the fact that you're here at this webinar as a little bit of maybe hope that you do see that there is maybe something that will help, because you're here to gain information. And maybe I'm seeing that maybe there is a part of you that believes that something could help, and maybe learning something new, maybe even practicing that grounding strategy that we did together, maybe that could um, help. But definitely, I would recommend to start trying with mapping out your own triggers to see. That's always a really good first step. Together with building awareness. So those two things together, that could be just a really good first step. Okay, my child is unable to talk about it. The part of the general uncomfortableness seems to be what she is saying. She's very vague and she shuts down. I'm wondering what the specific therapy sessions look like. Would they go through all of these steps? So, great question. So the program, TrickStop, it's actually it's online. It's you get online sessions that are tailor made for you by your personal therapist, and the communication with your therapist happens online with a text-based chat. So the parent program really gives you specific strategies to help work with your child. Depending on how old your child is, they might be able to sign up themselves and really try to understand and kind of pick apart maybe this vague sense and really work better at work together with a therapist to identify maybe some specific triggers and try to make some more sense of this vague general uncomfortableness that you're talking about. Um, okay, next question is I have an 11-year-old daughter who started pulling and very quickly within a few weeks was completely bald. We brought her to her pediatrician who said it's anxiety and to medicate her. That was the only recommendation. So I've been doing my own research. But what and where do you recommend we start? She's so young and she really doesn't know what her triggers are. I've been looking at wearables which might help. Any recommendations for what wearables? So that's, first of all, I'm so sorry that that's been your experience so far. It sounds really, really frustrating. And it's great that you're doing your own research. It's great that you're here at this webinar. I would definitely look into the parent program. I think that is a really good um, starting spot for you guys also. You'll get matched up with a therapist that'll be available to you. You can write, you'll get um, to message them with specific questions that you have, and you'll really work together at understanding what her specific triggers are. It makes sense that she's so young. You're saying she doesn't know what her triggers are, but then the idea is that you'll be in the program and you'll get all the tools in order to help her. Like you said, she is very young, so we would want you to be able to kind of explain things to her and work with her together and do really the program together so that you can best help her. Um, the next question was, have you ever heard of pulling decreasing or totally disappearing while being on a plant-based diet? It happened to me, plus I have a reference to a book about it, bought from Amazon. Would you like the info on it? Sounds cool. Sure, if you want to share it in the chat, that would be interesting. Um, I haven't heard of that actually. I don't know about any research on that. Um, but um, that's great if that worked for you. I wonder if there's also other things that happen in conjunction with going on a plant-based diet, but maybe there's things about maybe a sense of control, or things that maybe help decrease other elements, maybe of stress or anxiety, or maybe there were biological things that were going on also. So very interesting. Okay, so the next question is, oh, wait, to this one. I feel bumps or pimples on my scalp and I pull to get rid of the pimple. How can I change that desire? Okay, so first of all, great that you're noticing that it's this physical tactile sensation um that is your trigger. So you're saying that the desire is to get rid of the pimple, the physical sensation. So really here, we would recommend trying to first of all understand, maybe to map it out and try and see if there's other triggers that go along with it also. Is it maybe in a certain situation, in a certain context? And then typically we do um the main treatment is competing responses. So if you very in one sentence, if you work with a therapist in our program, you'll get way more information and go much deeper into and get a lot more richer detail. But in one sentence, it's competing responses is the idea of finding an action that you can't do at the same time as pulling and saying to your and making a commitment to do those actions instead of the pulling. So it's not about changing the desire. We're saying that that's something that's going to happen, but it's about finding a competing behavior that you can't do while you're pulling. Oh, and also, sorry, we have webinars on that as well. So the next question is I pull to achieve a goal. That goal is to get that goal is to get a hair that has a good bulb on the end and causes me to continue to pull until I get there. Are there more steps I can take so I control that urge? So you're talking really about this focused pulling style, right? With the intent. So really, first step is to notice when this happens. So what causes you to get that to start the episode? What causes you to start um that urge of getting that good bulb? It's a feeling of satisfaction. So really try to understand what are the layers that coincide with it as well. Um, okay. Next question is I've been pulling for more than 20 years. I tried everything from even fidget spinners covering my hair, but the satisfaction of pulling and ripping the hair feels like an addiction that I can't resist. That is a very common description, and I'm really happy that you shared that here. Um, it's like trying to quit smoking, right? I have 100% awareness and I tell myself to stop, but my body won't respond. I'm 37 years old and probably started pulling at 16 or 17 years old. Wow. So first of all, thank you for sharing. That really isn't, um, it's not obvious that you would want to share that with this group. Um, and so I think that this is, it's really like I said, it's a common description, this idea that it's an addiction. I can't resist it. I tell myself to stop, but I can't. You've really been dealing with it for over 20 years. It's a long time. Um, I would really, first of all, suggest trying this idea of mapping out your triggers before the episode happens, before the urge comes. Start by trying to create a daily log, try to log as the day goes on, not at the end of the day. I mean, if you can't do it as in the moment, then at the end of the day is better than like at the end of the week. Um, um, and also, it sounds like it's been something that you've been struggling with for a long time. So maybe working with a therapist together one-on-one really could be helpful just to fine tune some of this work. Um, okay, so wearables really is the next question is what are wearables? So these are really different devices that you can wear. Some are bracelets, things like that that often can tell you maybe when you're in doing a certain gesture and then can often have like a certain sensor and signal and kind of have an alert. Um, to try and get you to stop pulling right before or right before you're about to do it. Okay, somebody else wrote, wow, we have a lot of questions. Um, I will go 6 months without pulling my hair and eating it, and then something stressful will happen, i.e. loss of job or something major in life that upends things, and I fall right back into a soothing routine of pulling. This is again a very common pattern. I'll pull for a month or so until I've done a damn good amount of damage, noticeable amount of damage. Hair also in my teeth doing damage as well to my gums. Ugh, I need to break this cycle. How can I do this? So first of all, this idea of relapse, the idea of of going 6 months without pulling hair, and then falling back into like slipping a slip up kind of thing. That is common, and that's why we often say birds. That's why we often say that you can, if you're joining our program, we actually have a maintenance program that you don't have to pay the full amount, and then you can go into just a quick check-in with your therapist or just a quick look at the different tools. So I would recommend definitely starting with the program and then seeing if you want to go into the maintenance mode, and you can email our customer support about that. Okay, great. Um, our therapist said that the daughter, the 11-year-old, I believe, is under stress because of co-parenting and going back and forth between two very different houses. I'm not sure if this behavior, perhaps if she stops this behavior, would it just shift to something else? Um, So it definitely could be an underlying sense of anxiety. So yeah, it's very good that she's seeing a therapist. But again, a lot of therapists don't uh, specialize in trichotillomania or BFRBs or body focused repetitive behavior. So that is something that you could ask them about. And if maybe the therapist is working with your daughter on the underlying anxiety and all of the emotions, maybe you could work with her specifically, work in this parent program specifically on the behavior of hair pulling, and then you could kind of work on at it from both angles. Um, and then you could support her that way. 13. Okay. Um, Okay, another question is if you pull as a result of dealing with a traumatic event that has happened in the past, also very common. How do you begin to understand and create a new path to help stop pulling your hair? Great question. So, you're talking about, we actually have um I believe it. Yeah, I did one not that long ago, blanking out. A webinar all about trauma and picking. So maybe look on our YouTube channel or on our website about that. Sorry, pulling. Trauma and hair pulling. And uh, with this behavior, again, it's again all about mapping out for yourself and understanding maybe there's certain flashbacks to the traumatic event that bring up the urge to pull. Maybe there's certain emotions that are tied to the traumatic event, and then pulling relieves these emotions. So, really, the first step again is to map out your triggers and to understand in order to identify different strategies to target each of these different triggers. So I hope that's helpful. Okay, we have time for a few more questions. Um, I pulled to achieve a goal. The goal is to get that um, the good bulb, and in the end causes me to continue pulling until I get there. Are there more steps I can take so I can control the urge? I feel like I just answered a very similar question. Maybe it was you. I don't remember, sorry. But this idea of achieving the satisfaction of getting a good bulb. So yes, there definitely are more steps. Like I said, this is the first layer of building awareness and mapping out your triggers. And then the next step is really to learn the strategies to help deal with those different triggers and prepare for them. So definitely look up our webinars on that because we're not getting into those today. But I did mention the idea of competing responses, and that's a big element of habit reversal training or HRT. Okay, great. Thank you for the book. Thank you. Um, Great. Um, all right, we're gonna do one last question. So my wife needs this help. She's been pulling slash cutting her hair for many years. 4 to 5 hour episodes in front of the mirror again yesterday. She asked for my help trimming lips in her hair, odd millimeter of hair in specific areas. I'm stuck in enabling mode by having to help her. 12 hours of me having to provide care cuts in August. Wow. Questions. A, how can I guide her to you? B, how can I convince her to stop asking me to cut her hair? Because the last few years of that help in cutting her hair have been really not helped. And see if she's not keen to sign up, does it make sense for me to sign up as a parent? Um, wow, great questions. Um, I would start definitely by either showing her a recording of this, maybe this webinar or another webinar, maybe that you think she would connect to. Look on our YouTube channel, either showing her something about that she might be engaged in, be able to connect with, maybe or showing her our website. Um, we have great testimonials there. That is definitely something else. And then in terms of signing up as a parent, I would email customer support with that question. Actually, we have it's a gray area, I would say. So that's a really specific question. So email support@trickstop.com. But that is a really great question, and I'm really happy that you attended today. I'm sorry, everyone, that we don't have any more time to answer the rest of the questions. Well, I was scrolling quickly through. I'm seeing a lot of comments. So I really hope that you guys, if you have any more questions, definitely send me an email to maya@helpingminds.com. But thank you all for attending and for your really thought-provoking questions. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.